All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, I remember around that 2011-2012 season when Carmelo Anthony first joined the New York Knicks in a trade. Eventually, he got hurt. I believe he was injured early in 2012. And Mike D'Antoni, the coach at the time, was desperately trying to figure out a lineup change that could bring some potency back onto the basketball floor. So they called up a player, an emergency player from the D-League by the name of Jeremy Lin. And what was most notable about Jeremy Lin, of course, as we all know, is that he was Asian. He was an Asian wing player. Now, there had been Asian players in the NBA before, but for the most part, they normally were centers or power forwards. You know, they were big men who were asked to rebound and block shots or what have you, clog the lane. Well, Jeremy Lin came in and he was a wing. And from the first moment he stepped on the floor, he immediately became a Garden favorite, scored a couple of baskets. I believe he had an and one. And then it went from there. He became a bit of a novelty act. And then every game after that, he would build up more and more respect and equity to the point where Mike D'Antoni eventually put him in the Steve Nash role. And that's when linsanity got started, where every game he was scoring 25 points, 30 points, and getting 12, 13, 14 assists. And what I started to notice from the media was how every game, with every performance, they would start to trump up his skill level and his talent more and more. And it became very blatant what they were doing. They were trying to racialize the conversation to exalt Jeremy Lin and to harass the great and very, very prominent black athletes in the NBA. Because there's still a level of disdain towards the so-called black man that he's so dominant in the NBA and the NFL. So whenever there's a player of another race who's able to perform very well with a high level of proficiency in a sport that, for the most part, has become dominated by black men, what the media does is they play up the racial angle. And we're starting to see the same thing right now with Mr. Luka Dončić. And that's to take nothing away from him. I think that he's going to be a great player. Right now, he's a very fun-to-watch rookie. But I say this all the time when it comes to the NBA. These rookies, they come in and they average 17, 18 points per game, and everybody wants to make them a Hall of Famer. Let's wait and see what they become in their next season. Right now, Donovan Mitchell, Ben Simmons, the kid out there with Boston, Jason Tatum, they're pretty much having the same year they had last year. There's been very little growth. Sometimes guys come in and they average 17 points a game, and they do that for 10 years. Sometimes guys come in and average 17 points a game as a rookie, and then they become a 26, 27 point per game guy. You never know. Point being is this. I always watch for a lot of racialized rhetoric from the media, from sports team owners, etc., who will tell you without telling you that we're happy to have someone to report on who isn't like everybody else, quote unquote. So let's pay very close attention to what Mr. Mark Cuban states here. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
All right, last night here in LA, we saw Luka Dončić scoring a career-high 32 points, leading Dallas past the Clippers 125-121. Now Mavs owner Mark Cuban is weighing in on his star rookie's experience in Slovenia. In an interview with Eurohoops, Cuban said, quote, "If we took our best kids, and 7 years before they are McDonald's All-Americans, we sent them over to Slovenia to get an education, the league would be 1,000 times better."
Now, you know, that in and of itself is bad, but it's not terrible. There's nothing really racial about that. What he's basically saying is that the coaching in Europe is better than the coaching in the NBA. So he already pretty much has disrespected the coaching here in America, but there's nothing racial about that. But now this blurb here is where he starts to go into the racialized aspect. He says they just learn how to play basketball while our guys learn how to taunt and put together mixtapes. Put together mixtapes? What is this dude talking about? Is he talking about hip-hop mixtapes? Is he talking about mixtapes of guys slam dunking that you might see on World Star or on the internet? Like, what does that have to do with players becoming better basketball players? Now, keep in mind, this is the same person, Mark Cuban, who in the aftermath of the Trayvon Martin situation, he pretty much became the face of, I'm a rich, scared white man, and I'm not scared to admit it. Remember, he said, if he saw a black guy coming down the street with a hoodie on, he crossed the street. Now, why he felt the need to say that, I have no idea. I mean, for those of us who are just regular people, if you see one person walking down the street at 1 o'clock at night and he has a hoodie on and it's 70 degrees outside, Yeah, antennas are going to be out no matter what race they are.
Just learn how to play basketball, while our guys learn how to taunt and put together mixtapes. Byron, you have the floor.
Look at Byron. Byron mad as hell.
Whoo, Mark Cuban, my man. Man, that kind of ticks me off in so many different ways, because you're just downing our American kids here on how to play the game of basketball. I think we have a lot of American kids who've done really well in the NBA, and to throw that type of shot at our kids is disheartening for me.
Well, also understand that Mark Cuban is speaking from a perspective of somebody who's very frustrated. His team has been very bad for the last 5 or 6 years or so, and the last great player that has been on his team was also a European. So, I mean, as a matter of fact, when we look at the history of Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks, many of the more prominent players on his squad have not been from America. Steve Nash is from Canada. Of course, Dirk Nowitzki is from Germany. Now we have this kid, Luka Dončić, who's Southeastern European as well. So, I mean, of course, he's also had guys like Michael Finley and Tyson Chandler and Jason Kidd, who are all American, but he forgets about them because he's in the midst of Luka mania.
And I'm a big fan of Mark Cuban for all he's done in the NBA and the way he loves his players and things of that nature. But this shot is totally uncalled for. And I know you want to kind of protect your young player and stand up for him and say how great he is and all that stuff. But you don't have to take a shot at our kids here in the United States, because our kids here in the United States.
Luka Dončić is on his way to starting to be promoted as the next quote-unquote great white hype. They're just doing it in a very subliminal way.
States have played basketball.
And the dude could play his ass off, don't get it twisted. But I just see that that's what they're building towards.
Basketball for a long time and done some really good things. I'm being one of those kids who have learned how to play, the game here in the United States, and I think I did pretty good.
I think okay.
You know, so for him to kind of take a shot at us, I was a little taken back by that.
I think there is a reasonable discussion to have about the development system in the United States, and in fact the NBA is working with the NCAA and working with USA Basketball to improve it, and that is a conversation I'd love to have with many people, and Mark Cuban, and have had. But this particular talking about Slovenia is not, I think, relevant and probably not necessary.
I mean, he might.
Somebody needs to tell me when the last time is that Slovenia won the gold medal for basketball in the Olympics. Somebody please help me out with that one. At the end of the day, there are going to be many great European players who come over into the league, but I don't remember any European player who even approached being dominant other than Nowitzki. Now, Manu Ginobili is a European player. Many people say, no, he's not. He's Argentinian. Manu Ginobili is Italian. He was born and raised in Argentina, but he's Italian. Tony Parker, we also know, was from France. But at the end of the day, when I see a statement like that, well, our players learn how to taunt and make mixtapes. Like, really? That's what we're going with this, Mark?
He might know something about he said went to school, I mean, education. Like, is the educational system in Slovenia something?
I am not educated about the education.
Well, I think that when he says education, he's talking about basketball education. He's saying that players here in America don't know how to play the game. At least that's where I think he's going with it. That was more of a slap in the face of American basketball coaching.
Educational system in Slovenia. We've had a couple of good Slovenian players.
But the notion that American black players are greedy and selfish and just want to go one-on-one, that's an old notion. That's why I say when you see certain people say certain things, you have to understand the underlying intent. And a lot of times it's not even a conscious underlying intent on their part. You know, they're even unconscious to the subconscious message that they're sending. But, you know, a lot of it's just based on layers and layers of programming. Rachel Nichols herself and many of the contributors to her show, like Brian Windhorst and Zach Lowe, have been ballyhooing Luka Dončić for a very long time now. I've been hearing about him on this television show here for the last 2 years. This is prior to him finally getting drafted. And they do very little of this for so-called black players all the way in high school. As a matter of fact, I don't know of another player who I've heard about before I've even seen play like a Luka Dončić since maybe LeBron James. And LeBron James, we were able to see him on television. Once again, I think that Luka Dončić, he has the potential to be a bigger, stronger version of Steve Nash. Which, I mean, if that's your ceiling, that means that you're going to the Hall of Fame. So we'll see what happens. But there are other great rookies in the NBA right now, other very good rookies in the NBA right now who can also play. Luka Dončić can play. He has a very good basketball IQ. But this notion that the coaching is so much better overseas. If the coaching is so much better overseas, why are we not seeing the results when there are global tournaments that are being staged all across the world? America's always winning. So either the black athletes are that much greater than the other athletes around the world, where their deficiencies when it comes to basketball IQ are not put to the forefront or are not revealed, or the coaching in America is not as bad as Mark Cuban tries to make it out to be.
We've had a few good American.
Unfortunately,
a whole lot of good.
For the great
American
development
players.
of Slovenian players, they did not qualify for the World Cup next year.
Also, didn't Luka Dončić spend a few of his years in Spain?
Yes, he did.
So-
Now, the Spanish players oftentimes are very good and very well developed. That Spain national team is no joke.
Some very important development.
How many gold medals do the U.S. have, and how many do Sublime?
We're going to be talking about this through the end of the show. Thanks to them for joining us. Enjoy the weekend.
Good question, Byron Scott. I asked the same one. But it is what it is. I think that Byron Scott knows what this is actually about, as do I, but it's okay. It is what it is. Anyway, peace.